In the following tutorial, we're going to take a look at shape tweening in Flash. Now, shape tweens are one of the original type of tweens in Flash, and you can do a lot of interesting things with them. We're going to go through 4 different scenarios of how to use them, and so let's begin with a shape distortion with a little bit of color change as well. To begin, we want to create a new layer for our animation, and since this layer is going to be the main timeline animation, let's call this main animation. Now I'm going to use the rectangle tool, draw a rectangle just like I've drawn many times before, and I've changed it so that my stroke and fill are fairly easy to see. Now currently I have a drawing object on this layer, and this is a shape tween, so it's probably best to right click and break this apart and convert it to a shape so that we don't have a drawing object but we have the series of dots here. Now, in order to do a shape tween, we have to create 2 keyframes like we do with classic tweens and shape tweens. So we can go later on in our animation, might go to frame 30, right-click and choose Insert Keyframe. And that's inserting a keyframe for that layer that has the animation. The other layers have disappeared because they're only 1 frame long, so we need to extend those timelines out by selecting those timelines, right-clicking and choosing Insert Frame. That way we've extended them but not made new keyframes. In order to create the animation, we need to adjust one of the keyframes so they look different than the other. So I'm going to move my box down a little bit, and I'm actually going to click off of it to unselect it and then adjust the points a little bit. And you'll notice when I scrub, of course, we just see the 2 frames. And now I can right click in between the 2 keyframes and choose Insert or Create Shape Tween, and now you'll see the animation happening. So one of the things that's cool about shape tweens is that you can distort your shapes a little bit and create some really interesting looks. Now we can also distort a little bit more. I'm going to distort this a little bit more by clicking on the sides and dragging them out just a little bit, making them a little bit rounded. And now I'm going to go back to the beginning, click off the object or off the shape, and distort these shapes a little bit. So now you'll see that I am getting some sort of distortion of that shape. And shape tweens are the only way for you to get these distortions. Now I can also shape tween colors. If I select my stroke only, I can change the color, and I'll select my fill and change the color as well, and you'll see that these will animate. So you can get some pretty interesting things by changing both your stroke and fills as well as the distortion of your objects. Now in the next tutorial we're going to do a little bit more, which is we're going to be using multiple colors and shape distortions at the same time. So let's begin this by creating a new layer. And this is going to be all the rest of the anims because they'll each be in their own independent timelines. To begin, we're going to start drawing with a larger rectangle. And so I'm going to click and drag to create a little bit larger rectangle than I had before. Let's break this apart with Control B, or make sure that you're in shape drawing mode to begin with. Now I'm going to adjust some of the different colors in here to make a little bit more complexity. So I'm going to select through here and change the colors inside so I have some bands of color. That way we can definitely see that this object is a little bit more complex. Now let's select that entire object, and we're going to turn this into a movie clip to do our animation inside of. So right click, choose Convert to Symbol, and this is going to be Shape Distortion Anim. Now double click to go inside the timeline of Shape Distortion Anim, and here's where we'll create the animation for the shape distortion. So I'm going to right click at frame 30 and insert a keyframe. And now what I'm going to do is use select everything, select the shape, and I'm going to use the free transform tool to edit this. Now we've got the ability to choose the distortion tools and actually distort this shape all at one time, which is kind of cool. And you'll see we of course get kind of a three-dimensional look that way. Or we can also use the envelope tool, which can be even a little bit more complex. Let's just try the regular distortion tool first, and let's create our shape tween by right-clicking in between the two, and this is the type of thing that you want to see. Sometimes this can cause a lot of problems. Now, one of the things that you might notice here is that when I'm animating this, the strokes are reappearing. So it could be that animating with the strokes is not a good idea. So we've got a couple different choices. We might try converting our strokes to shape and see if that works a little bit better. So I'll do modify, shape, convert lines to fills. Let me do that same exact thing on the first keyframe as well. Modify, shape, convert lines to fills. And let's see if that animates better. We're still getting some problems. So what we could try doing is removing that on the outside so that we don't have that kind of stroke on the outside when we do the animation. And see if that works better. Well, obviously, here are some problems with shape distortions. And that is, with shape distortions, it's often very difficult to get things to work exactly the way that you want. So you have to be aware of the complexity of your shapes and find different ways to animate so that you can get things to be a little bit more particular and uniform, or realistic looking. I guess realistic is not the right word, but rather making it look right. So that is the end of that little part of the animation. If you want to go ahead and test your movie with Control-Enter, it'd be good to be able to see your animations there. Go ahead and save your work, removing the start, and then go on to the next tutorials.